It's two conscious guys talking, where conscious male leaders come together and have a discussion that is deep, that is nourishing, that allows us to see the illumination of consciousness that's unfolding progressively for men that are waking up in the world, and where you can get insights on your own awakening as a man, and also for amazing women that want to learn more about men's challenges and struggles that have created some of the dysfunction we've seen within men in its society, often called, quote unquote, the patriarchy and other terms. What created it? What is the genesis of it all? What can we do about it today to empower men to be all that they're meant to be and to support the awakening of consciousness for men and women and all? Hey, Matt, good to be with you.
Hey, good to see you, Daniel. How we doing today?
Great. I just keep thinking about how we were at that Red Pill event in September and how awesome that was. So gorgeous being there and up on the mountaintops looking down there in what I can never say the town's right, but Encinitas or whatever. And
Escondido. Yeah, that was Escondido. I live in Encinitas, it's not far from there, but all those
okay.
e-towns.
Yes, yes. So just how amazing that was. And I keep telling people the story about how I was dropped off and I was the first one to arrive on that Sunday before the retreat kicked off. And I'm sitting there like it's like nobody's around. And it's so gorgeous. And I'm just like, oh, isn't this cool? I get to just soak all this in. Nobody's even here yet. And then the rest of it unfolded, and man, it was all kinds. I've got so many stories from that event, and it was so much fun, and so many connections were made, and you were one of them. So I'm grateful to be with you today.
Yeah, that was a great event. John and Monsi, they put on a fantastic experience for people to drop into. The container they set is second to none as far as people being able to open up and share, and just people feeling authentic and connected is the good word. I feel like I like to come back to when I think of John and Monsi and everything they put together. So happy to have met you there as well as some other really awesome people.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, we're here talking about we're on the Men and Mental Health series right now. And I've interviewed quite a few guys, I guess, so far already. And man, one of the things that just always comes up is for men that we have to be so tough, so strong. We can't show any emotions, can't be vulnerable, all this stuff. And as I think about that, I know it's a men thing for sure. Like it's really been put on men. But then I'm always thinking about it from every facet. I'm like, well, there's a lot of women that feel that way too in their own way. Gotta be always strong. You gotta be a strong one, and so it is something in society, but definitely it's almost a mandate, historically for men anyway. And you don't cry, boys don't cry. My daughters, I think they've seen me cry now, but like, they're teenagers, ones at college and everything, and like we've never seen you cry. I'm like, I have tears in my eyes almost every single day at some moment. Usually it's joy, like just joy even brings tears to my eyes. So I'm like, yeah, your dad's definitely cries, but then still that stereotype is so strong. They just assume I would never cry, right? Because men are strong, and a lot of their like friends even say that I'm a boy, I'm a man or whatever. I'm not supposed to. I'm supposed to be tough. I don't have emotions, and it's still, even though it's gotten better. The idea of encouraging everybody to share their emotions and whatnot, like it's a strong one, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, we're both men in this society. We're probably similar to the same age. I'm just going to be 40 next week, and I feel like the programming socially, culturally, as men is of that. We don't feel emotion. We need to be stoic, right? We get to, like, say, not see us cry when we get happy, and not see us cry when we get sad. And as you mentioned, we're men, we're human. We experience the full range of emotions. But as providers, as protectors, as the safety nets of our families, of our groups, of our overall culture and world, there's something about not showing that chink in the armor, that weakness of, quote unquote, weakness of crying and of feeling your emotions, right? What I've come to notice and really experience is, though, when we let ourselves feel that full range of emotions and move through them quickly. I feel like that's a job as a man now, is to process more quickly, is to feel the emotions. If you got to cry, get it through you, and 5 minutes later, an hour later, maybe a day later, whatever it is, you get to be back in your power. Obviously, the quicker the better, because being in our power, regardless of man or woman, we all want to be empowered, right? We want to be feeling good, doing good. And when we're crying joy or tear or sadness, there's generally a little bit of a surrender there, which is a great space to be, but for a smaller period of time, I guess, as a man, as we get to be those providers, be those protectors, be the example for strength, right? Women exude creativity, and they're the yang to our yin, and strength as a man is something that culturally and even as a family now, I have 2 young kids, we get to show strength because they are looking to us. And if we exude weakness, they're going to feel less safe. They're going to feel less confident. So our being strength, exuding strength really gives them the opportunity to be more vulnerable, more open, more feminine, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I've seen that. If I start getting more yin, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just all being tender and soft, and just like, well, just let everything go flow and be easy. It sounds great, but there's consequences. What I find is, like, usually with my business, for example, things don't go as robustly for me anyway. It may work for some people, but it doesn't work as well for me. And then what I see with family, like with my partner Deb, is her tension starts ratcheting up because she's like, where's the masculine? Like, subconsciously, I believe that happens. And like, okay, things need to happen, let's go. And but when I'm more in my masculine and I'm stronger, and there's more of I perceive anyway, more of a softness, a sweetness that's more pervasive, totally. And so totally, yeah, totally. I see those dynamics. And yeah, I think, yeah, when men can be really strong in families or in relationships, like, yeah, all the women, ladies around can start relaxing a little bit more, because they feel like, you've got me. Like, it is different for women. I mean, we could go on. We're equal, and yeah, of course we're equal, but we're different. And so,
yeah, equal but different, exactly. Equal in a way that we're all bringing something really high level to the table, but it's different. They bring different, they bring different things to the table. They're more, essentially more high EQ. Generally, they're able to attune to their emotions and or feelings and or intuition, potentially even better than men. Where we're more, structured, more. Like, say, standing in our strength, less, more stoic, less, less to bend with the wind as far as what's coming and what's going. And what I find is that every situation requires masculine and feminine. So if you're with your partner and you're being feminine, she has to be more masculine, right? And most women don't really like to be in their masculine. I don't think they feel natural in that setting. So, not to say we should never be in our feminine, they should never be in their masculine, but 80-20, right? 80% of the time we need to be holding that space of the masculine, and being that anchor for them, so they can be 80% of the time in their feminine. And then, like I say, I like the 80-20 rule. I feel like it applies to almost everything. But so there's that 20% of the time we get to show vulnerability, show that we are human, to really connect with the feminine, to really connect with whoever, even other men, to show that there is a vulnerability there, because we are human. And I think a lot of men feel like it has to be 100% masculine all the time, never show weakness. And I find as we mature, as we evolve as a species, that's not necessarily the case. Even man to man, we want to see there's human there. We want to see there's that connection. And I think there's more depth in the connection between men when we're able to let that guard down and be in our feminine from period to period, so we can connect deeper and have that deeper bond, if you will.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's really, really powerful to have that heart center, love. Hey, I love you, brother, and all that stuff. Like, it's so vital. I mean, it's really nourishing, because there's a lot of times when that isn't happening. It's all this other kind of operating in other ways. And I love what you said. I want to get back to the 80-20, because I just was dealing with this on a coaching call. I was being coached, and and it was around, you know, a goal and like what I had followed through on. And we're looking at, okay, what's the next thing you're going to do on this goal or whatever kind of thing. And it's like, well, I see I haven't even done this basic thing. Like I missed one day doing this one thing or whatever, you know, this week. And I was being, you know, like, that's how I can get very tough on myself, and sometimes others for sure too, and be like, what the hell, you know, like, I need to take care of that basic first or whatever before I do anything else, and getting strong on that. And then the group is all women actually in that group. And so the facilitator said, it's okay. It's okay. You missed one day. It's all right. You know, like, calm down. You know, like, and I wasn't really beating up on myself. I was just being like, well, what the hell? You know, I just should sharpen up on that. And she just really helped back me off. So when you said 80-20, I think sometimes what I've seen with like some, you know, with some of my clients that are guys that are go-getters, like sometimes we're so into achieving and everything. It's like, you know, what the hell? I wasn't my word, you know, like some of them say things like that. I didn't follow through. I didn't do this. Now, I think what they're saying ultimately is I don't feel like a man now, you know, like at some level, right? I don't feel like a man, because a man, you know, follows through on his word no matter what. Absolutely, 100%. And if it's not 100%, then maybe it should be I'm nothing, and it's nothing now. And then they go from one extreme to another. Some guys, or they just really get toxic with all this tension, and I got to make it happen all the time, and I can't blow it once, and it gets really crazy fast. So I love when you said 80-20. Like, you're right. I mean, like, if you were to apply that to, like, okay, you need to be sharp and on target, and if you aren't, like, 20% of the time you're more, you know, in the flow and centered, like, you'd be fine, you know, like, don't have to be.
Probably better, right? Probably better if you're trying to be 100% masculine all the time. You think about nature, and you know, I like to think nature's a good model, but like in nature, you know, the man in the, you know, the masculine, whatever creature it is, they don't probably get to ebb and flow as much. But we as humans, we've evolved to a point where we can, and we can be attuned with our feminine. We can be able to step into that for greater power, because the masculine and feminine energy are both powerful energies. It's just how do we apply them. So being able to stand in our masculine, but yet be attuned with the feminine, both from a connection and communication standpoint, but just from an overall, give ourselves a little slack, give ourselves a little bit of leeway sometimes, because if you're just going to beat yourself up, that's not productive. That's going to be just tearing you down even further, as opposed to giving yourself that grace and that permission to screw up sometimes, because we're human. And there needs to be the masculine accountability, but there also needs to be the feminine sort of forgiveness and surrender, if you will.
Yeah, what I love is I think they got it right in like professional sports in this aspect. At least I like the philosophy. And I like I'm looking to incorporate it more in my business with people I work with. But it's like this idea of, like, when we're on a losing streak, we actually that's the time to be more nurturing, more loving, more kind. Like, literally, like, that's the protocol. Like, for most of the, like, coaches in the NFL, like, they know, like, okay, don't you know, be blowing, you know, like, some coaches do that. Maybe you could argue it's better, but like the protocol tends to be like to be more encouraging. You know, hey, we're doing it. You know, look at what we did do well, but we need to correct these things. Totally, we're going to sharp on it. It's okay. But then when they win, it sort of flips. It's like, all right, you know, that was great. All right, yeah. All right, now we got to play better, though, because blah blah blah, and then they really start getting on. Like, and I think, like, that there's wisdom in that. Like, when you're in a place of you're already elevated, then it's almost more approachable to be like, okay, now let's get more diligent on cleaning this stuff up and get more badass on that stuff, because you already feel good, right? So it's not going to tear you down. It's going to be like you're more able to take that in, is how I see it. So I think, like, even when we self-manage ourselves, so to speak, like, I think that can be a good idea, like, just to go easier on ourselves, because we tend to be so hard on ourselves, is what I find, all of us, you know, men and women.
Absolutely. You know, I always think it comes back to, like, the feedback you know, method that I've been using, that I got taught maybe more than a decade ago. It's like, you know, you start with something positive. Hey, you know, I thought that was a really amazing interview you did. You know, I love the way you did this. And it could have been a little shorter because it went a little long, whatever, but great job, keep going, whatever. So it's like the sandwich of, feminine, positivity, masculine structure with some, feminine. So you kind of need, but you need both, right? You can't just have one. Like I say, I think that's the whole point of this. The whole point of this topic is like, we aren't just masculine, we aren't just feminine. We have both energies within us. How are you going to utilize them? How are you going to maximize the potential of both of these energies as a human to get the results you're looking for, whether that be to run a business or whatever it is. And like I say, as a business owner, we're communicating with men and women. So if you're doing something with only all men, maybe it would shift a little. Maybe there would be a little less, maybe 90-10 as opposed to 80-20 or whatever it is. But those dynamics get to be fluid with whoever you're communicating with or whoever you're leading or whoever the situation requires. So
I know, like, I've run into mental health issues when I was on both ends of it. Probably I was being really, I don't know if you even call it feminine. I was just being really passive. Sometimes when I've been passive in my life, I'm depressed because I'm not, whenever you're not being yourself, you're going to end up not feeling good. You're going to feel depressed or stressed out or anxious or lonely or whatever you want to call it. And so I've been in those places in my life. And then there's been times when I was a taskmaster. All right, no matter what, I have to stay up night and day, and I work forever. I won't even sleep. Then you might get some results for a while, but like eventually you're going to crash and burn. And I've experienced that, and with the mental health consequences of that, panic attacks or anxiety issues, etc. And so for me, it's always that when I get into that place too, I don't want it. You tend to start going, and historically, especially, like I didn't want to show my vulnerability at all, right? Like, no matter what, you don't want people to see that side, and that's a real issue because you can't get any support, you can't get any nurturance. You're just like, everybody out of my way. I'm constantly at war with life, kind of, and sort of that mode, and you can't get any nurturance, so you don't get any peace. There's no peace. There's no mental health. So I know that's been one way. And then my other way, though, has been the passivity and being really super yin, which feels really good. But then when there needs to be certain bottom line results that may really do move life forward, okay, I'm not going. Maybe I wasn't going to the gym, or maybe I'm not getting some results in the business. Oh man, God, why isn't this happening? Right, and so then I'm dealing with that, even though maybe I feel good being so in a centered, nurturing place. Sometimes it was just being passive, and then that crashes. So it's a dynamic balance between this yin and yang for sure. Otherwise, you do end up with the mental health issues, is what I've seen on my own path.
Yeah, exactly. I think the reason a lot of men struggle with mental health is because of the culture and everything we said before, as far as they can never, they have to be 100% masculine all the time. And when you're denying a reality that you're experiencing, you're going to have a dissonance within your mind, within your body, within your spirit, right? So to continue to push that down, continue to not look at it, that's what drives the mental health issues for a lot of men, I feel like, because they don't have a set and setting where they can open up and be that 20% feminine, whether it be they don't feel comfortable with their partner, they don't have a men's group or a support group, or just overall they've never had a model or a mentor to even show them how to do it themselves. So they don't even know that it's possible. They don't even have the formula on how to really do it. So I think that's the main thing I see with men in mental health, is they're just not able to access that feminine, or not given the permission to access that feminine. They don't really have the model on how to do it. And yeah, I get it. That's challenging. I live in Southern California, and there's definitely a lot of conversation around that, men's group support, whatever. It's very different than other parts of the country or other parts of the world even. So
yeah, totally. So how about you? Like, I like to get into the stories of each guy too, and their own struggles maybe they've had with mental health. And I know that you've had some sort of a journey with that, as most every guy so far that's been on the show for the series has that kind of journey. Where did you run into challenges, whether it was earlier in life or as an adult or both? Like, where were some of your challenges, so we can bring illumination to where maybe some people are even right now on their journey to help them through it? And so what unfolded for you? How did you get through it? All that sort of thing.
Yeah, I appreciate that question. Like I say, I don't get to speak into this on most of my my conversations or most of the interviews I do, so it's always good to have this be part of the conversation. Growing up, I was definitely a mama's boy. I'm closer to my mom than my father. And I did race motocross, which is inherently kind of more masculine, more like gritty. But overall, I didn't have the edge that I needed to really actually take it to that next level to like be the best. I got to a certain level when I was really successful at it, but at the age of 19, I got an injury and I realized that it wasn't my calling to really kind of do that. And that really kind of put me on a path of figuring out who I was and what I was meant to do. And honestly, at the age of 27, I figured out that I had a repressed memory from childhood. And it's interesting just even talking about this, but my repressed memory was of being sexually abused by a man. And so I was like 12 years old. One of my friends, father, he took advantage of me while I was sleeping. And that was a repressed memory that I didn't think about for 15 years. And it was driving a lot of my unconscious behaviors of being more feminine, even just more, less aggressive, less, I'd say less masculine. Right. And so at the age of 27, I had this like breakthrough of like, I remembered, and then I got to process all the things that how I'd been showing up in because of this previous experience, and how that was actually unconsciously driving all of my decisions. So just the realization is just the start, right? So for me, going through some EMDR therapy and using psychedelics to integrate and transform the perspective I had of myself was truly a game changer for me to really realize that I'm not my past. Anything that happened to me, I get to choose how I experience it, or how I really, process that moving forward, and how I can use that as actually maybe a strength. So I can be more in my vulnerability when I need to be, because I've been there and I've experienced a lot of vulnerability and a lot of passiveness, as you mentioned. And I think that was one of the things that actually flipped the switch for me to be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more masculine in a lot of ways, as far as my relationships, specifically my relationships. I didn't have great relationships with women before the age of 27, because I don't know. There was honestly a lot of things going on in the unconscious mind. It was like, hey, maybe I'm really homosexual because I've been with a man before. I was 12 and I didn't choose it, but it was still the conscious or the unconscious thoughts going through your mind. So for me, I got to process a lot of who I was, a lot of identity, as far as who I was as a man, I was as a person, what I wanted to actually create, how I wanted to actually have other people feel around me, what kind of relationships I wanted to have. So it was a full-on process of figuring out and deep diving, who I was and what I wanted to create in my life moving forward. And in doing that, that automatically gives you power. That gives you not only are you transmuting or transcending previous experiences and previous beliefs, but you're now setting the bar. You're really kind of consciously, intentionally setting up who you want to be. And that was a multi-year process to really go through all that, to really figure out who I really wanted to be, how I wanted to show up, how I wanted people to experience me. And now, 15 years later, almost, I feel like I'm in a good spot where I, am able to balance that masculine and feminine. Before any of that, I was actually probably more in my feminine, or at least 50-50. I was spending a lot more time in that feminine type of energy, just because I think maybe I was a little bit scared of the masculine, because I saw what it did to me as a young child, right? And that masculine energy of just, taking whatever you want and, being aggressive and all the things that we think of when we think of masculine, whether it be war or, sex and rape or any of that kind of stuff, right? So for me, just really getting to the core of the issue, and really figuring out what was driving my beliefs and my patterns and all of my actions, was really obviously a game changer to go deep on that, to really transcend it, and really to to embrace who I really was as a man, as a man who'd been through what I've been through, and what I wanted to create. As I just had a new girlfriend at the time, now my wife. So now we went through that together, which obviously even strengthened our bond and our relationship, because she knows that what I've been through, and she knows now where I'm at and what I've had to transcend to get here. So I think there's a strength in sharing your journey, specifically with those around you, specifically those that you're close to. I'm not saying you have to shout it on YouTube or put it on the rooftops, but in general, when we share it, it gets it outside of our own experience, and lets other people realize that what we've experienced and how it's evolved, or how it's shaped us as a human. So it's been a really powerful, yet a lot of work to go through all that, but completely worth it, of course. Anytime you can unpack what's driving you and really get to the core of any of your trauma and issues that you've experienced in your past, there's a high likelihood that you're going to be able to now consciously create a better future that's less impacted by those previous events and less driven by unconscious behaviors.
Right. Right. Wow. Well, thanks for sharing that. I mean, it's not everybody is willing to share those things and on the airwaves, so to speak, and whatnot. But I think it's so liberating because there are so many people that have experienced these things, right? I'm sure I've had other. I'm right off the top of my head. I'm not 100%, but I'm sure out of all the guests I've had on, for sure, there's been others that have similar experiences in their own way, right? Um, I just can't pull them up off the top of my head, maybe, but I know there's so many men that have experienced these things, and it's one of those things where, yeah, I mean, there would be so many questions. Like you said, am I homosexual? Like there's so many things in that dynamic that come up, and that you put the work in. I mean, um, and that I think I would think, I don't know, did you have this thought? I'm just curious because I don't know. I didn't have an experience like that one. So I was thinking, okay, did you feel like, well, this shouldn't, if I'm a real man, this shouldn't even have happened to me or something like that? Or did you have those kind of ideas too about it? Or
Yeah, to a certain degree. Like, why me? Like, why did this happen? Did I call this in? Did I want this? Was this something that I was, unconsciously, desiring, right, as a person? And like I say, that was the whole question. Like, maybe I'm homosexual. At that point, obviously, I'd been with women, and that was my main attraction. But I
right.
had this belief system, like, hey, like you've been with a man, like this is, so it's like, especially as a younger person, like you're unclear, kind of like,
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. So I get to kind of
Right.
explore that. I got to kind of figure out, what really feels resonant to me when I actually get rid of all the bullshit and kind of get clear with who I am. Obviously, I realize that I'm straight and I love women, and that I'm more attracted. I'm attracted to the feminine, right? So there's nothing wrong if you were attracted to the masculine. It just turns out that was just something that was planted within my subconscious because of the experiences I had, not necessarily who I was or what I was actually attracted to. So I'm sure there's a lot of, everyone has trauma when they're growing up, whether it be sexual abuse or just even mental and physical abuse or anything. There's, bullying, all that kind of stuff. Everyone has some sort of trauma. So
Yeah.
that trauma for me specifically set the plate for me to really question everything, specifically around my masculinity, my sexuality, everything that, I was as a human, as a person, as a man. And I think, this conversation around men, most men never, at this point, don't really have that conversation with themselves. They don't do that kind of deep dive because they're not necessarily needing to necessarily go there, because they don't have that type of trauma. They're not questioning their sexuality. They're not questioning who they are as a man. They've been programmed probably from their father or their mentors or whatever the figures they followed, that, this is how man is, and this is who I am, and this is everything. So, it's interesting to see how different experiences really shape who we are and how we show up, and then how we end up, taking on different parts of our lives, because it, out of necessity, right? Like I said, I didn't really choose that. It was more of a, it popped for me that it was real. And then I was like, well, I didn't really have a choice at that point. I was kind of like, well, I can either just completely shut off and continue down the path that I was going and be probably unfulfilled and miserable for the rest of my life, or I get to face this, figure out what it is, transmute it, transcend it, transform whatever I'm using or whatever is driving me, and figure out what I really want to be and who I really want to, who I want to be as an adult, right? I feel like at 27, you're still, you're an adult, of course, but you're still fairly young, under 30 now. I'm going to be 40 next week, so under 30, I feel like it's still figuring shit out, still kind of getting your basis and your foundation of who you are and what you want, what your skills are and what you can really bring to the table. So
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Totally. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. We all experience different traumas, and for me, I always, like, for me, I was bullied. Like, again, like I befriended this bully that was in. So many people have probably heard this and listened to all my shows, but it's like the constant story I tell. But it was just like a kid was held back a grade when I was in fourth grade, and all of a sudden it's like I could feel it because I'm intuitive and empathic. I'm like, this guy's gonna mess with the class. He's changing the dynamics vibe. I could just feel it right away. And then so I decided to befriend him, and so we were kind of friends at school and stuff. And then but he would try to tell me what to do. Not do this, not do that, to get in trouble or whatever. And one day I said no, and then I was like, okay, now I'm going to bully you. Then like I'm going to give you a hard time or whatever. And
And that was the traumatic thing, was like, this is like, it was always like, why, right? Like, because at my center, I'm really connected to the love that I am, even, no matter what. Like, that's what I'm really dedicated to in this lifetime, I believe, because it's always been there, like that love in my heart. And
Hmm.
so, the bullying, honestly, if I told people what it is, like, it doesn't sound like much. Oh, he killed, yeah, it's another kid kill a plant in my class. Okay, some kids would be like, no big deal, whatever. Okay, he killed my plant, then no big deal. For me, it was devastating. It was like, it's a huge trauma, right? It's just funny what a huge trauma is to different people, and
Yeah.
just a sense of vigilance, like, okay, I have to be ready every day, because based on, maybe past lives is how I see it. I don't know, like, I could, my life could be at risk every single day. And it sounds totally ludicrous, right? So I have to be ready to actually fight this guy to the death. So that happened for a couple of years. I was in that place, because I ain't going to show that, I'm a guy. I really am a badass, and I'll show it to everybody, the world, and I'll pound this guy in the ground. I'll kill him even if I have to. I don't care. And like, like, it's just insane. And so I think, like, for me, like, it really confronted, it really awoken, like, my shadow that I wasn't aware of until that point in my life, of there is this sort of monster killer, in the shadows, and it'll come out, and it can do anything. It can protect you. It can take over and whatever. And um, I guess I felt some power in that, but also I was, I ended up becoming depressed and everything. So yeah, it's interesting how we formulate a way of being. I basically, like, my friends would laugh. We walk around, I wouldn't talk, and I just look like I wanted to hurt somebody. Like, a lot of times, even though I'm pretty nice looking guy, in terms of, like, he looks nice, he looks innocent. But back then, a lot of times, no, I just looked like a guy that wanted to kill everybody in sight. Because I was in that vigilance, right? Because I kept thinking, nobody's going to emasculate me, no one's going to hurt me, like, and so it was so strong, and nobody did really try. At some point, like, it happened, like, nobody was trying. I'm like, come on, I'm ready every day. And I mean, this went on for years, even past high school. There's times I got in that mode when there was threats. I remember being at grad school, and there was kids with guns and stuff. I'm like, I don't care, they got guns, I'm ready. It's just insane.
Yeah.
So I think, like, there's this vigilant part that, many men I've talked to have, of, like, we've got to protect not only ourselves but others too. I mean, like, I've got a family. I know, not recently, but there's been times with our family, or something happens, and I'm like, they're doing that to my house or something. Those kids across the street, they're all going down if that's what it takes, right? This, that protector comes out, and it's just insane. I just feel like, you probably, I could see it in you too, like, that you would have that in you, like, nothing could stop me, like, it's all going down.
Yeah, it definitely changes when you have kids. So like when you have kids, like, even a partner, even a wife or whatever. So whenever you feel like there's other people outside of yourself that you have to protect. So if there's something, greater than yourself that you're willing to give your life for, right? Then that automatically will show up in certain situations, right? Early on, like, say, one of the things I did to, like, say, I was racing motocross, and one of my coaches, he was like, you need to be more aggressive, you need to be more whatever. So like, I ended up signing up for boxing classes. So early on, getting hit in the face is it's a very awakening thing. Like, say, getting punched and getting, just in a fight, so to speak, even if it's a controlled fight, like being in a fight that ignites your inner masculine, like, we're warriors. Like, literally, if you're living here today, you're descendants of warriors who were victorious and passed their genes on. So everyone in the world is sort of the cream of the crop of the people who were fighters and were warriors, right? Wartime people, essentially. So that's deep within everyone, specifically every man, that if needed, if it, something happened today, we had to take up arms, like, we could all essentially do it in a sense. Like, obviously it'd be some mental anguish for a lot of men, myself included. I don't want to do that, but if I have to do that, specifically now to protect my family, it's there, it's activated. So I think as a man, as I feel like martial art, boxing, whatever, man or woman, I'm going to put my daughter, she's 5, I'm going to put her in a martial art, because being able to harness that energy and realizing that you have, you can be your own sovereign sort of protection, is empowering, and it gives you a space where you don't have to walk around looking like, say being that bully or being that stoic person. You can kind of be yourself, and if everyone messes with you, then you can kind of just flip the switch, right? And you kind of be in that space, and then people will obviously, maybe you have to beat someone up one or two times before they really take you seriously, potentially, but in general, you have that option to jump into that. And I feel like most kids, myself included, I didn't grow up with, like, say, any martial art or anything like that, but I feel like kids in general would be beneficial to have that training and that knowing that they are powerful, and that if anyone does mess with them, that they are able to take care of themselves. There's a confidence and a safety there that, as a young person, could really benefit, your growth and your evolution as a human. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I love that viewpoint. Like, yeah, we come from the fighters, the people that came up on top. So, I mean, that is true. I mean, I guess I hadn't really recently thought about that, but that's true. And so, yeah, we've got that ability inside of us, and so that's an interesting perspective right there. Now, I wanted to come back to your story when you talk, because this is another common thing I had, like somebody who was going towards being an Olympian and everything, and he was really good at like track, and he had an injury, and then he couldn't continue, and that sort of thing, and how that totally like this is who I am. Now what do I do, right? And so it sounds like you had a somewhat similar experience with what happened with you with the motocross. Was it like, did you feel that way about it? Like this is what I pride myself on. This is where my, like, almost like where my power is. This is the thing I do, and I do it so well. Or where were you at with that? Because I think those are potent things to share too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to a certain level, I think there's definitely people who are more embodied with that identity with whatever they're doing. As I'd mentioned, I was attempting to embody that identity as a racer, as a person who can go out and get it done and win, and win at all costs, elbow people, whatever you're gonna do, right? And I feel like I never quite got there, and that's why I actually had the epiphany once I got hurt, that this was not my calling. This was something that I didn't really feel excited about really doing on that highest level when it came down to it. I didn't really want to hurt other people. I didn't really want to, be ultra masculine, aggressive in that, which you have to be kind of any sport, really, whether you're, it's a combat sport or otherwise. You have to be aggressive. You have to be, in your masculine. And at that point, I wasn't equipped to really do it. So by the age of 19, from 13 to 19, a good 6.5 years, I raced, and I was at a top level locally, even some of the national amateur events. But to really take that next leap, you really have to have the killer instinct, right? And at that point, I realized I didn't have it. So it was actually more of a relief, I think, because I was attempting to embody that for so long. Like, go to boxing classes, do this, be more aggressive. And it definitely helped. It definitely brought out some of my inner warrior, if you will. Mm-hmm. But when I actually got hurt, there was a part of me that was relieved. I was kind of like, oh, okay, I don't have to do that in order to be successful. I can use my brain. I can use other things in this world to actually have success. And at that point, my only vision of success was being a professional motocross racer who got paid for their services. So there was a part of me that was kind of like, oh shoot, what do I do now? And there was a part of me that kind of like, oh, relieved I don't have to do that. So it was a little bit, I wasn't like 100% in, and that was my identity, and then it flipped and I was just kind of like depressed. So it was actually a little bit good in the sense of like, okay, this isn't who you naturally are. What do I get to discover? Who am I really? What do I really get to step into next that will be more me, be more a good fit for who I am as my archetype? So there wasn't that major drop off, but it was definitely, anytime you're committed to something, you're doing it for a long period of time, and that stops, your routines change, your friends probably changed, or you're doing different things, everything changes. So change is, it's challenging, and it's definitely, not necessarily comfortable. But for me, it was necessary, and it was actually beneficial to step out of that and realize that I wasn't necessarily, who I was as my identity. It wasn't necessarily who I wanted to become as a human or as a man. So that drop off was a little less for me, but I've definitely been around people, training for whatever, and you get out of that, or something they say, usually it's injury, right? Most people, especially men, we don't stop until we get injured, until we are physically have to stop, whether it be hey, I had friends that had so many concussions, they were basically told by the doctor, like, hey, you can continue to ride, but if you have another bad concussion, you could die, you go into a coma, or you could be like basically brain dead, or not in a good space, right? And so I saw friends, I had friends that died. I had friends that died. I had friends that were paralyzed. I had friends that were, physically injured to enough where they didn't really race anymore, or didn't really have a normal life. So actually, when I got injured, and I compressed some discs in my back, and kind of hurt my back, was enough to like, okay, this is a wake up call that if I really got hurt, being paralyzed would have been like the worst thing. I mean, it would still be a bad thing, but like at that point in my life, I'd have been like, devastated if I'd have been paralyzed or had no use of my physicality. So at that point, I realized that this wasn't necessarily the main thing that I wanted to do. And then I was really, I was excited. My goal at that point, I was 19. I was like, I want to be able to walk when I'm 30. That was my goal. So I was like, okay, this is feeling more aligned stepping out of this, even though it was something that I've desired, even though it was something that people thought that I could do. My parents were supportive, all that stuff, have all that stuff. You don't want to let people down, right? And then, so I had I had about a year of transition where I didn't really know what to do. I went and worked for my family business for a couple of years after that. And then right after that, I ended up moving to California, which is the sort of started my whole journey 17 years ago. And, happy and very thankful that everything worked out the way it did. But, you can only connect those dots looking back. When you're in them real time, you don't really know where it's headed. You're not sure exactly what the outcomes are going to be. So
That's for sure. I remember feeling that a lot in my 20s, trying to figure out what am I going to be doing. And definitely, that's definitely a time for a lot of people anyway, where they still have no clue really where their life is going ultimately. I was just exploring, discovering, and some do, but like most 20-year-olds don't. I mean, when you're in your 20s, you're still trying to figure it out. We're always trying to figure it out, I guess, to some degree, but there's more of that. Seems like for sure 20s a formative period. So yeah, I know like some of the things that I wanted to talk about, like the things that help with mental health, like things like you connected with that helped you as a man and with mental health. I'll start with me, and then we'll get into what helped with you. Like for me, like what helped and what didn't help. What didn't help, maybe I don't know. Everything helped, I guess. You can't really judge it ultimately because everything brings you down the pathway, right? So like going to a psychiatrist when I was a teenager, and just thinking I was crazy, basically, because I could tell him I can move objects, I can blow stuff up in my mind, and like I got these abilities, and oh yeah, all right, well, start writing out the scripts and everything, and like so like you learn like you can't be yourself, so that wasn't working out so well. Like so to me it like affirmed like you are you're different, like because that's one of those things you continue to think, well, I'm just a freak, kind of thing, like so like, oh, I guess I'm just a freak, and they want to put all like, because I didn't buy into their labels. I'm like, I'm a this, I'm a that, whatever. I am who I am. At some level, I knew that all along. I never really bought into it. I knew I had anxiety and depression. I knew that there was something to that. And but what helped me was journaling. Like I did a lot of journaling when I was younger, and that helped, even though it was a lot of negativity, but just getting it out of me. It was just like journaling it out was helpful. And then I got into creative writing, so I started learning to express myself, because I wasn't a talkative guy back then at all. I was just either passive or with a scowl on my face, I'll kill you all, one of the two modes. And anyway, and so I started getting out of my bubble and socializing and stuff and opening up, and got a psychology degree, whatever. I got into sales because I wanted to get out of being, introverted and shy or whatever, all those things, and start showing up. And so I did that for a while. And then, all those things were part, and then I was getting, actually some counseling therapy from a psychiatrist. That helped. That was helpful. I was throughout that period I was lifting weights or doing exercise and things like that. That was helpful. And then I started with martial arts when I was younger, in that time period too. And then so that I mean that was that was helpful. I mean, especially when I was in college, when I did the martial arts, like one of my teachers was good. Some of the things he talked about I still remember to this day. The teachings more than all the stuff that we learned through the physical stuff, but like just things he said like were really helpful. And so there's a number of helpful things along the way. And I think, it was a progressive thing for me. And then when I got into grad school later for psychology, though, that's when I went nuts, because I felt like I'd always underachieved, and now look out, here I come. And then, I had to blow up with my mental health then. And then medication came in that helped alleviate some of that. But I had to learn to find my center. And I went through all kinds of trauma in grad school. It's a whole nother story for another show again. Anyway, a lot of being misunderstood, you don't measure up, blah, blah, blah. Like my worst fears, right? Of course, manifested. Like, you're a freak, you're weird, you could totally understand people, but you don't know how to work with them, and you're awkward, and you have these issues, that issues, you ask too many questions, blah, 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 like all those things. But ultimately, like, just the encouragement of family, like I did have encouraging people in my life, you're going to be just fine. You're brilliant, innovative people often get persecuted. I was told by my dad, that was a helpful statement. Like, just see these little nuggets. Sometimes it's just the little nuggets we get along the way that help us. Like, okay, remember, this is part of what's going on here. And yeah, just doing my own inner work ultimately too. Then I just started, getting into that metaphysics and everything, and more counseling here and there. And I would say medication has been part of the path and helped. Minimal doses of stuff, but wasn't a whole lot, but definitely was potent and helpful. So I could sleep at night, so I could relax at all, at nighttime especially. That's when the hunter comes out. It's like, all right, I better watch. There may be an unforeseen attack in the middle of the night. You better stay awake. Pretty crazy. And but yeah, exercise is huge for me. Continuing to use this body of mine, doing more martial arts at times has helped. So a lot of different things, even like things like tennis, like things that bring me joy, like just keep focusing it, just totally like masculine, all over joy. It's not a yielding thing all the time with joy for me. Like, I do better in the masculine joy, even like, or going for joy. And that seems to really, like, to engage my inner child in that way seems to be really helpful. So there's so many things, but I wanted to, just mention mine, but then you talked about specific things that you did that helped you with your trauma and what you had dealt with. You mentioned EMDR, you've been talking about martial arts, you talked about psychedelics and stuff. So I'm just trying to put out a menu for people, like, for some, because if one thing we say can help somebody today, that's always what I'm looking for. So tell us about what things that helped you.
Yeah, appreciate that question. Like I said, it is something that I feel like is pertinent and very, on the top of a lot of men's minds, specifically as we're going through new phases of life, and just, we're in a new world. I feel like the last 3 or 4 years, everything's been shifting and evolving and feels a little bit unstable, right? So you hit on a few ones that work for me as well. Obviously, physicality. My love language is physical touch. I'm a very kinesthetic person. Essentially, my energy is very activated when I'm physical. So I've always been, very active, very physical in that sense. But having a discipline, like, say, a martial art, I've done Muay Thai and boxing and stuff like that, where it's basically a focus of that masculine physicality, if you will. And it gives you confidence, right? And I think that's the core of most depression, is that anxiety, that lack of confidence in some area or another. Oh, I'm bad with women, or oh, my job, sucks, or oh, I'm just not a good person, or whatever you're lacking, right? There's an anxiety there. So when you're confident, you're not anxious, right? When you're confident in a situation, why would you're essentially just not anxious. So for me, getting confidence in certain areas, like, not even just being able to protect myself, but just, like, say, being able to know and be attuned to that masculine energy that I have within me. I think there was a part of me that would always push that down and was afraid of it, like I mentioned before. And so we're really, embracing that and really activating that part of me was extremely, it was extremely sharpening to me to really feel confident, to feel empowered in those states. You also mentioned doing things that bring you joy. For sure, I think that's overlooked as a man, and as in our society currently, we're not meant to necessarily experience joy in that way. But I think the more joy we experience, whether that be whatever it is, through a hobby or through a loved one or through children or whatever it is, when we can experience joy on a day-to-day basis, that just automatically, that's like the antidote. That's the ultimate antidepressant, right? Like, you can feel shitty one moment, and then your kid gives you a hug and you feel joy, and it's like it melts away, right? So harnessing my masculinity through physicality, experiencing and doing things that brought me joy. And then, I'd be lying if I didn't include plant medicines in that equation, right? For me, like say when I was 27, I didn't use cannabis until I was 27. And that was actually the activator for me to remember my repressed thoughts. So in a way, cannabis was a gateway for me to dive deeper into my subconscious mind, to dive deeper into my whole belief system. And then from there, cannabis is just the tip, so to speak, and it doesn't really go super, super deep. And then from there, ayahuasca, strong psilocybin doses, stuff like that, where, sassafras, which is a naturally occurring MDMA, those types of things really help me to integrate and to really, activate even portions of myself that I didn't realize were there, that I didn't really ever have attunement to. And they really give you that altered perspective of, hey, like, this is everything that's going on. This is the overall, universe / worldview of what's possible, or what is experiencing out there. And from one way, it's like it makes you, a speck of dust in the cosmic realm, which is both humbling, but then empowering, realizing that, not everything you do matters and nothing you do matters, right? It's like everything you do matters on a microcosm of your current environment, but on the grand scheme of things, probably doesn't make much of a ripple, right, in the universal scheme. So that humblingness and that perspective, I think, is what psychedelics really help people with. Is that I think other people feel anxious around death, around what's going to happen when they die, or just overall like where, what is God, or what's the greater powers that be? I don't feel like I'm in control of my life, all that kind of stuff. When you do psychedelics, at least for me and a lot of people I've, communed with, it gives you that it kind of gives you this piece of like, everything's going to be okay, in a sense of, hey, like you're in control, but there's no control, right? You're in control of what you can act on right now, but it's a very chaotic system, and that's okay. And that's it's part of the human experience, if you will. So really having that really 30,000 foot view or universal view perspective for me really helps ground me and really feel like I'm I can do anything, yet I can do nothing, and feel okay about that in a day's time. So that depression, that anxiety for me hasn't been there really since my late 20s, when I really opened up the Pandora's box with cannabis and psychedelics to really have those altered perspectives. And then on day-to-day basis, I do take nootropics and small doses of CBD and other cannabinoids to activate my system, to really keep me on track. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that's for everyone, but in general, I would rather have people microdosing psilocybin than taking SSRIs, or taking CBD and small parts of THC, as opposed to Tylenol and Advil and other things that they're putting in their body. So these alternative plant medicines, for sure, I think help to. They usually, they work with our body, right? Like these cannabinoids, we have an endocannabinoid system that's built in for us to really, lock and key for those things to go into. And most people have no idea even about the endocannabinoid system. My wife's a nurse. She went to, school. I know doctors, they go through medical school. They don't even study the endocannabinoid system. And there's we won't go into that whole conversation of why that is. No conspiracies or whatever, but in general, it's really
spiritual. Wait, I'll just jump in for a second. On the Spiritual Rockstar show, we probably will, though. So guys, check out that episode. It'll be out sometime. It'll probably already be out, actually, by the time this airs. So yeah, we will get into that, but not today.
Yeah, no, it's a great topic that I love talking about. But the compounds that for me day to day, like say I have a nootropic stack of different herbs and stuff that I take daily that keeps me focused. Like I say, when we're on purpose, when we're living on purpose, then there's no reason to be depressed. When you're living unintentionally, or if you're living by the whim of whatever's coming into your life, then it's like, oh, this is a good day because the good things came. Oh, this is a bad day because this happened to me, right? So when you're living on purpose, when you're living with intention, that alone, I think, quelches a lot of the anxiety, which essentially causes the long-term depressions.
Yeah. It's getting that the positive energy and momentum going is definitely a part of it. I know for me, I've never, I smoked weed when I was in high school a few times. The first time I did it, I was working at a grocery store. That was pretty wild. I'm like, whoa, to grabbing the groceries is like, wow. Because, the first time for a lot of people is strong, right? It's a stronger experience. So, but yeah, those are some of the crazy things we do when we're younger sometimes. But anyway, but for me, like I always, because I always wonder why I'm not really drawn to it personally. Like I think it's perfect and great for people if they're drawn to it. I have no issue whatsoever with it. I don't think it's right or wrong. It's like right fit. So for me, I just never got into it just because I've got enough cosmic connection and openness and 30, like if I just go from that aspect, like I'm already like, whoa, you know, like I'm got my own psychedelics going on. I think so like I don't know, so inner psychedelics or something, but so I already feel like I'm connected in that way, you know, for a long time, and seen these things. Like I said, I like to blow things up or whatever, all these ideas as I was younger, and not that I was always doing things like that at all, but like I had that feeling like I could do these things. And so what am I trying to say? So one of the things I wanted to make sure I share that really is the foundation for my life is meditation too. Like meditation is like, if I stop meditating today, I will be an absolute wreck. Like I could end up in a psych ward. I mean, it's possible. Like I get very unstable without my medication, which is meditation. So I have got to meditate. Otherwise, yeah, I will. I'll be pretty off balance. So I that's one of the things that's been a huge saving grace for me in my life. And then prayer. And there's so many things, right? There's so many things we do that boost our mood and take us to another level. But I could go on and on. But that was a foundational one I want to make sure we mentioned today. If you haven't given meditation a full chance, do so.
Yeah, meditation. We didn't really talk about that, but in January 2012, I started a 30-day meditation challenge, and then I just haven't stopped. So I've been almost 12 years now of daily meditation. Now, of course, I've missed a few days here and there, but I'm like you. If I don't meditate, even just 5 minutes, even with kids now, it makes it much more challenging. But even just 5 minutes to get that centered, to get that connection to spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, and to really, realize my power and vision my day, right? I'm a very visual person. So for me, visualization is part of I even got that when I was racing motocross. They would have me visualize the start, visualize myself getting the lead, and visualize all the jumps you would do. So I kind of brought that into my current reality where for me, I do a meditation, then I do like a 3 to 5 minute visualization of what my day is going to look like, and how I want it to go, anything, whatever I'm going to experience that day, I kind of already visualize it that morning. And for me, that's crucial, because not only is it giving me a space of calm and power, but then it's literally training your brain to go out and manifest the things that it has saw in your mind already. And that's super powerful. Most people don't talk about visualization. It's not necessarily maybe outside of sports and other things where, you can visualize yourself doing it and be the thing, and that's great, but it translates in anything in life you can really visualize. And it's really about belief, right? It's about a belief system. When you believe something that something's possible, when you believe that you can do something, the mind is halfway there to achieving it, as long as you can believe it. So
yeah. And once it gets in there and it's like, this is happening, okay, it's happening, okay, we're on board. That's how I kind of see it. But anyway, so for people to check out, anything that you got coming up, as far as any, if that, I don't know, when you mentioned with the meditation event you have coming up, but anything where people can connect with you or check you out if they wanted to, off the inspiration of this interview. I know you're definitely expert in the number of levels, in my opinion, with business and with psychedelic stuff and everything. And I'll let you share all that. But where can people learn more about you?
Yeah, so obviously I'm in the business of plant medicine, awareness in plant medicine, best practices and how to use plant medicines both as an individual, but also in a business sense. So how can we steward these compounds into the greater collective, so people can have the option to have these as opposed to pharmaceuticals, as opposed to nothing, as opposed to men just raw dogging it and being out there every day and going through the motions. So you can check out innercircle.biz. That's our business site. That basically is an entrepreneurial community of people who are doing business in the cannabis, CBD, and the psychedelic space. If you go to Matt-Ritchey, we can put those links in there. That's my personal site. You can connect with me there. It gives you a little bit more history about all the stuff I've done. I've been in the leadership development, personal transformation space for about 15 years now. And only the last 4+ years have I been bringing that leadership training and the mastermind concept to the plant medicine industry, if you will. So if you're in that space, for sure, connect with me. We have a really great burgeoning community of people that are, doing, have businesses in the cannabis and plant medicine space all around. I'm based in Southern California, but we have members from around the globe. But if you're here in Southern California, we always have events going on here from meditation to, different types of activations for fun and for connection and for community. We're very blessed to have a really burgeoning community here of people that do different things, from, like, say, sound bowls and healing work to, like, say, meditation and inner work to, there's a friend of mine does these really awesome, masculine, feminine, it's not play per se, but it's kind of like it's the dance of the masculine and feminine. So we get to embody both, like be in our full masculine, be in our full feminine. And the plants in general are a little more feminine. Mary Jane, right? Cannabis is a feminine plant, right? So the idea that we use cannabis to relax a little bit, to open up, to open our hearts a little bit, that's something we do activations around and help men really attune to their feminine, if you will, so they can be a more complete person, a more empowered human, so they can do better work in their day-to-day life and be more connected to their spouses and partners. That's all the work that I'm excited to be doing as an empowered leader that gets to model and be a mentor for people in the space to really open up and embrace that 20% of the feminine that they get to really step into and really empower their life so they can be a more complete human. I feel like say when we're embracing both our masculine and our feminine, we are, A, more fulfilled, but just be more powerful. Like, say, the most powerful men are able to kind of ebb and flow in between that and really connect with the feminine, as well as be ultra masculine and get shit done. So,
as they always say, there's that little yin in the yang and a little yang in the yin and the symbolism and everything. And so, yeah, there's definitely a dynamic weave of all of it. And then I feel like one supports the other, right? And it's an amazing conversation to have. So, but yeah, everybody check that out. We'll put in links into the show notes for the show. And yeah, so, okay. Well, Matt, it's been so wonderful to have you on and, really to just connect more with you. And I really appreciate, the journey you've been on and what it's led you to support and share in the world now and who you are. And so thank you so much for coming for this conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it, Daniel. This is a fun conversation to have. And I'm thankful that you're out here having these conversations so that other men can dive in and figure out maybe what's stopping them and figure out some tools and processes so they can be more empowered in their life. That's the game. So I appreciate you doing this.
Thank you for listening in to Just Two Conscious Guys Talking, where our mission is to impact millions of men ultimately to deepen their awakening by examining their consciousness of what's been unfolding for them with male stereotypes and programming that has allowed them to have opportunities to evolve during these times. It's an exciting time to bring more love to men and women around the world, and we are grateful for you tuning in today. Feel free to share this episode and keep tuning in, and also look in the show notes for a link to get notifications of future episodes. Until the next time, everyone, goodbye for now.